I want to show you guys a relationship that exists with the production curves to the next set of curves we're looking at, which is the cost curves. Quick review, we see total product increase at an increasing rate, then increase at a decreasing rate till its maximum point. It's the maximum because marginal product is equal to 0 at that point. And of course, marginal product cuts through the highest point of AP. And of course, this inflection point lines up with the highest point of MP. So when we look at short-run production, remember, we're looking at the relationship of inputs, something like laborers, to the amount of output that each one of them produces. When we convert over to costs, well, what we're going to see is that in costs, instead of looking at inputs and outputs goes back on the x-axis, where it belongs, in my opinion, and instead we're looking at costs. But remember, that's the cost, in this case, of hiring more and more workers, which were our inputs on the other diagram. So if we look at, for example, this was our production curve, it was our total product curve. Well, that's not quite right for total cost. Instead, we have to flip it over, and our total cost curve actually has this shape, where we see that as output goes up and up, at first, it has less and less cost, so it's getting flatter and flatter. But as we get to our inflection point, then to produce more and more and more to move to the right, it takes higher and higher and higher costs. So it's the same exact idea that we had when we looked at production. Well, what about this was our marginal product and our marginal costs? Well, for this, we're just going to flip it over. So instead of marginal product and marginal cost going up and down, instead what we see is that marginal costs are at first going to fall. And as they begin to rise, again, as they fall, they're going to pull down average cost with them. As they begin to rise, once they get above average cost, then we're going to see average costs come up and up and up. And it's not just a neat little trick or a visual. The point is that costs pretty much are the opposite of production. When we look at production, we're saying, well, how many inputs does it take to get an output? When we look at cost, we're saying, what does it cost to make an output? So those relationships are important to see how they work together.